Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And today we're going to talk about Founders Day.
Founders Day.
Founders Day, the latest horror film by the Bloomquists, two siblings who also wrote and directed the Tubi original She Came from the Woods, which we enjoyed. This is not a Tubi original. You're going to have to go and rent or buy it on a different platform if you want to watch it. But I actually recommend you do, because this movie is actually a really solid slasher movie with one hell of a twist ending that I did not see coming.
Founders Day has one of those reveals that kind of just keeps happening.
Yeah.
The entire second half of the film is just reveals.
There's a point halfway in the movie in which you feel like, oh shit, well, the movie's done now, right?
Right.
And then the movie keeps going. So for most of the movie, you actually do get a really solid slasher movie. The characters are just endearing enough to work. The kills are enjoyable enough. You enjoy watching some characters die, and you get sad when other characters die. But what really sold this movie for me is that last half. That last half when the movie just goes apeshit.
Yeah, because up until then, it's like, it feels like a reasonably by-the-numbers slasher movie.
The actual plot of this movie is you follow a teenage girl who's on the cusp of going to college. She is a lesbian. That is important to the plot of the movie. And during these last few months, they are holding a mayoral election in her hometown. And one day, while she's out trying to have like one last hurrah with her girlfriend, a serial killer shows up in a mask that looks like it has something to do with the election because it's got that kind of like ye old hair on it.
Yeah, it's got that ye old white curly wig on.
So you're like, okay, it's killing her girlfriend, who is the daughter of one of the mayoral candidates. So you can assume for most of the movie that it has something to do with the candidacy itself. We'll get into that in the spoiler section because this movie goes wild with the reveals when it gets to them. For most of the movie, it's her dealing with the fact that her girlfriend just died, while more people start dropping like flies, and eventually, you know, she's got to deal with the serial killer herself because all her friends are dying. I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's not like the A+ best movie gonna be on your top 10 list movie, but this is a solid B+ slasher movie that's elevated by having a great ending.
Yes.
It's cheesy at times, like it has some great one-liners that actually had me cackling while we're watching it. There's a character at one point who is slasher killed whilst in detention and has this really hilarious line when they're running away, like, "Sorry, Mr. Jackson, I'll never do it again." Mr. Jackson is a character in the movie who everyone in town kind of knows because he's been a teacher at this high school since forever.
Yeah.
So everyone's had him at one point, and he's most notable because he's played by the dad from Boy Meets World. But he's also the best actor in the movie, so every time he's on screen, it feels like the scene is like elevated by his presence. There's some actors in this movie that are not the best, but they're good at being fun with how over the top they are, and I applaud them for that. One of the directors themselves plays a character, plays the current mayor's assistant.
Yes.
Who was one of my prime suspects for like a huge chunk of this movie, to be honest.
Yeah, because he's like suspicious the entire time.
He's suspicious. He's also like that right amount of involved in everything, but also in the background enough to where like if there's a reveal that he's behind everything, you'd both believe it and also be like, oh, he wasn't my first suspect. Like, you know?
You totally expect that Scooby-Doo moment where you take the mask off and you're like, him?
Once again, we'll get to who is actually behind all this in the spoiler section, but just to get into my mindset, he was my prime suspect for most of this movie. So was the teacher for that matter, but that's mainly because he had the most recognizable actor in the role.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when you're watching like a procedural cop show and like, oh hey, it's John Lovitz. I wonder if he's gonna be like the murderer, you know? Like
yeah.
It's got all the goofy cheesiness of like an 80s horror movie, but like all the teen melodrama of a 90s horror movie.
Yeah.
With like the gore of a modern horror movie.
Yes.
It reminds me a lot of Thanksgiving in that way, where Thanksgiving kind of had a similar thing going on with it.
Yeah.
This year, we've had like a slew of pretty good slashers. Low Lives was good. I enjoyed Low Lives. There was another one called Killer Body Count that was pretty enjoyable. We've had some pretty good slasher movies, but this is towards the top of the heap of the slasher movies I've seen this year. Though, given that later this year, Terrifier 3 is coming out, it might be dethroned.
Yeah.
It might be dethroned.
You know.
if you like the cheese, if you like the fun, if you like the surprise reveals, I would recommend Founders Day. It's kind of got everything going for it. The only thing it doesn't have is something that Killer Body Count did have. There's not a lot of sex in this movie.
No, there's not a lot of nudity.
But if you want that, I recommend Killer Body Count on Tubi. The entire premise is that a bunch of sex fiends are put in like a Catholic fucking like correctional facility. And so like they're secretly running off and having sex the whole time while someone's running around killing them. That is a slasher movie that I also recommend. That one's the one you want to go to if you want the nudity and the sex. It also has a lesbian lead, so enjoy that.
Oh, this one too. Yeah.
This one too.
Does too.
It's actually become a common thing. Low Lives also has a lesbian lead, interestingly enough. The new modern final girl in slasher movies is either a bisexual or lesbian woman.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah. It feels like a natural evolution of the trope, so hey.
Yeah, it feels like maybe we're making up for lost time by having like 5 of them and less.
Well, because like how often in old slasher movies, like we're talking the 80s and 90s, if they even had a queer character, how often was the queer character the one that got to live in the end?
Never.
Exactly.
Never happened.
Exactly. Yeah. Having the final girl be queer themselves now, that is progress.
I'm just always amused when a bunch of that happens at once.
Oh yeah, it's like everyone had the same collective idea and it just happened. There is one thing I do want to talk about before the spoiler section, because it's not really a spoiler. There's a character in this movie who I guess is the sheriff or the commissioner. I'm not sure which role they fill because there's another character who kind of feels like they're the sheriff. But anyway, there's a character who's kind of leading the investigation into the serial kills. They have this like specific gimmick that I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, she keeps imitating a famous detective character from television.
Yes. Occasionally she'll be doing like the Kojak thing, and then suddenly you'll see her doing like the Columbo thing.
One more question.
And I'm sure that there's other cops from back in the day that she referenced throughout the movie that I missed. And what I love about it is that she's just terrible at her job. I don't know if it was intentional commentary or not, but it's kind of like talking about how like cops, when they become cops, think it's going to be like the movies or like TV.
Yeah.
But when shit actually gets real, they don't know what to do because it's not like TV. You're not like the heroic cop, So even though this is a goofy, dumb movie, it does have moments of like hilarious, over-the-top social commentary like that, which I appreciate it. Plus, it's just funny every time that cop shows up and you're like, what's her gimmick going to be this time?
Yeah, what's going to be this time? She's going to be speaking with a French accent. She has to be our own now.
Yeah. What's she going to do? Is she going to come back with a mustache?
Yeah.
Anyway, my fellow Gorehounds, we should probably move on to the spoiler section because unfortunately, as good as this movie is, it is a straightforward slasher. So outside of the twists, there isn't too much to talk about. This movie is currently available on just about every possible streaming platform you can rent a movie on. So I highly recommend renting it or buying it if anything we've said so far has enticed you. It is a solid, fun slasher movie with a great twist ending. And with that said, let us move on to the great twist ending. So you know how earlier in this vlog I mentioned that my prime suspect was the assistant to the mayor and that my second prime suspect was the teacher just because they were like most famous actor in the entire movie? I was kind of right. The first reveal that really happens in this movie is the main character, Allison, is chased down by the killer and her dad saves her, ends up stabbing the killer right in the chest. It's revealed to be her best friend who's been with her throughout the entire movie and is the sibling of the girl who was murdered earlier in the movie.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, okay, so it's like a revenge kill.
Yeah, it was like her brother. Like he was mentioning earlier, one of the other victims, his ex-girlfriend who cheated on him with this other guy who looks like he was going to be a victim had this not happened. So you're like, okay, well that's going on. But then you realize that you're only like 45 minutes in this 90-minute movie. So where the hell is it going from here?
Where's the rest of the movie?
What's happening here? Eventually, you realize that the movie's evolving in this direction where the town is like freaking out even though there's no evidence that there's a second killer. Everyone kind of assumes that the killings aren't over. Okay, is this movie like making social commentary about like mob mentality or anything like that? And it is set during like an election year, so it's obviously saying something about like the nature of political elections, especially with how fucking corrupt the mayor is and how shitty the opposite candidate is. Their kids have been murdered each, and then one of them turns out to be one of the murderers, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then the cop is like suspecting the main character's dad for no fucking reason. Turns out the deputy is in on this.
Yep.
He attacked the dad, and the dad is tied up somewhere, but where's he tied up? Well, back at the house. Why is he tied up back at the house? She has to rush to the house to go find her dad after the deputy ends up getting shot by the obvious red herring character of the shitty boyfriend.
Yeah, they might as well have called him like Red Herring.
Yeah,
you know,
he practically was Scooby-Doo's red herring throughout the movie. So she gets back home, and it's all set up like this grand romantic like gesture. There's like all these like flower petals everywhere. There's poems everywhere. Surprise, surprise. Turns out her girlfriend is alive. They fabricated her entire murder. And by they, I don't just mean her and her brother, because next twist.
Yeah, next twist.
Turns out she was working for the teacher, Mr. Jackson. He had under his employ the mayor's assistant, the deputy, and the two siblings.
Yep.
Her best friend and her girlfriend. They were essentially scheming to essentially overthrow the election, kill the electoral candidates, which includes their parents.
Yep.
So that he would inherit the mayoral office because he is next in line on the town council.
Right.
And all the other murders throughout, those were just to cover the tracks of what was really going on.
Yeah, yeah. They
because
had the truly intended murders, and then the ones that were essentially the crimes of opportunity that covered that up.
Their grand big plan also involves scapegoating her dad, which kind of has almost like a Scream kind of element to it, because that was also like Billy and Stu's plan. And to be honest, this entire last half, when the killers are monologuing and explaining their plans, very Scream. It's super Scream, especially when you get to the point where she's being chased by her ex-girlfriend, and they have that moment where like it looks like the girlfriend's dead, and then she jumps up and is like, we can make it work! And right before she finally offs her. Very much like that not in my movie moment in Scream. But here's the thing, Mr. Jackson wins.
Yeah, they get away with it.
Manages to convince the main character to go along with it. The movie ends with her giving her speech at college because she ended up like joining the student council and ended up becoming like the class president or some shit. She is inheriting an office and giving her speech while he is giving a speech to the town, and this is 1 year later, right? And they're giving the same exact speech. And the movie ends on this really ominous note where it's just like, the town is better off because of this, but at what cost? There's like this like ominous moment where everyone's clapping at her and cheering her on, and she's obviously about to have like a complete panic breakdown. So you get to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Villain wins, but Final Girl also survives. And they did a good job with it. I rewatched the movie when Jack was watching it, and I was noticing all the little details that actually led to this ending. It's not like something pulled out of their ass. Because I love 80s slasher movies, but one thing that's a consistent trend in most 80s slasher movies is whenever the killer is revealed, there was no way you could have guessed or predicted it, because there's no hints otherwise. Like, where was Mrs. Voorhees earlier in the movie of Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
She just shows up at the end, and it's like, oh, I guess it's Jason's mom. This movie, you go back to old conversations with certain characters, and they have a whole new light now.
Yeah.
The context is completely flipped on its head. There's one they actually point out to you in the movie where the mayor's assistant and the teacher are having this conversation of like, are we doing the right thing? And when they say that, you think they're talking about the fact that they're still putting on the Founders Day festival, despite the fact that people are getting murdered. Like, that's your original
but they're really
interpretation
talking about the plot.
Yeah, they're really talking about the murders themselves. That guy who plays the teacher is both great when he's playing the unassuming, caring, hippie teacher, and at the end when he's kind of playing the evil mastermind. He's so good at both of them.
Yeah.
I also love it when he's playing like the rock star mayor at the end, where he's just like, you know what, I'm just gonna wing it. Those are the big twists of this movie. It's fucking wild. They managed to include all of my prime suspects as being in on it, basically.
It's a very clever movie.
Yep.
It's a very clever movie.
There's a lot of good kills in this movie that I really enjoy. Like the girl having to crawl on the glass and then having her throat slit.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty intense.
Yeah.
The guy running for mayor, but not the current mayor.
Oh, yeah.
Him getting stabbed in the face with that letter opener was brutal as fuck. That was the one kill in the movie where I'm like, this is reaching like Terrifier territory.
Yeah, that seems a little excessive.
But then it makes sense when you find out it was his lesbian daughter who...
Yeah, just 30 seconds earlier he'd badmouthed.
Yeah, so it made sense in retrospect why she fucking just like mutilated his face so he was unrecognizable.
Oh yeah, another thing about this movie is that everyone just goes crazy.
Yes.
The murders start happening, and then just immediately everyone starts acting like a fucking psychopath.
One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when the mayor...
Yes.
Like, after both of the mayor's kids have basically been slaughtered, and the mayor themselves is, like, drinking themselves into a stupor, and they hold a town meeting about what do we do about all these murders? And she just, like, comes out and gives what feels like it's gonna be a rousing speech, but then turns it into a campaign ad.
Yeah.
And then completely goes off the rails with the, we're gonna go door to door, we're gonna drag the killer out into the streets, and we're gonna lynch him in the streets. And you're just like, whoa, what the fuck's happening?
And normally you would expect, like, the town would be all into it.
No.
But instead, the craziest looking, like, grizzled, toothless farmer guy who a minute ago was demanding action goes, oh my God, she's crazy.
Yeah, she's lost it. That's a great fucking scene. I love that.
Oh my God. Yeah, there's a constant subversion of expectation in this movie.
Absolutely. Like, just the fact that they have, like, a guy who's one of the killers revealed halfway through. And they still...
it's kind of like, it's very much like Psycho in reverse.
Yeah.
You know?
And yet you're still questioning what the fuck's gonna happen for the rest of the movie. By the way, I forgot to mention that one of the reasons why the main character is, like, one of the targets of all this is because her girlfriend is mad at her for going to college.
Yes.
Because it's going to require her to move away. Obviously, bitch was crazy because it is far easier to run away than it is to fake your own murder and become a serial killer.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, my fellow Gorehounds, Founders Day, ask for it by name. And where can they find you, Count Jackula?
Well, I stream on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday, and you can always find me there around 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to also follow me on social media, you can follow me at Counting Jack on the former Twitter, on the former Bird app. Okay? I'm also on the Blue Butterfly app, that being Blue Sky, at Count Jackula. How about you?
Y'all know me, I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me at the Horror Guru on Twitter, on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook. Just look up the Horror Guru or Blood Splattered Cinema and I'll be there. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you'd like to help out either of us more directly, be sure to check out our Patreon pages. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way, but we will certainly accept more. And with that said, my fellow Gorehounds, if you made it this far into the video, then I want you to comment below, and be sure to comment below using the hashtag Let's All Go to the Lobby in reference to a kill that happens in this movie while that song is playing. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Use that hashtag, that way I know, that way Jack knows, that way the whole world knows that you cheated on a dude who turned out to be a serial killer, so maybe he deserved it? I don't know. It is what it is. And this was a good movie.
Yeah.